Section 19. But you say these things because you either do not read or do not observe that such is most constantly the case with the word of God, that because of it the world is thrown into tumult, and that Christ openly declares, "I came not," says he, "to send peace, but a sword." Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. And in Luke, "I came to send fire upon the earth." Luke chapter 12, verse 49. And Paul, in Corinthians book 2, chapter 6, verse 5, "in tumults," etc. And the prophet in the second psalm abundantly testifies the same, declaring that the nations are in tumult, the people roaring, the kings rising up, and the princes conspiring against the Lord and against his Christ. As though he had said, multitude, height, wealth, power, wisdom, righteousness, and whatever is great in the world sets itself against the word of God. Look into the Acts of the Apostles and see what happened in the world on account of the word of Paul only, to say nothing of the other apostles. How he alone throws both the Gentiles and Jews into commotion, or, as the enemies themselves express it, turns the world upside down. Acts chapter 17, verse 6. Under Elijah, the kingdom of Israel was thrown into commotion, as King Ahab complains in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 17. What tumult was there under the other prophets, while they're all either killed at once or stoned to death, while Israel is taken captive into Assyria, and Judah also to Babylon? Was all this peace? The world and its God, in the second book of Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 4, cannot and will not bear the word of the true God, and the true God cannot and will not keep silence. While therefore these two gods are at war with each other, what can there be else in the whole world but tumult? Therefore to wish to silence these tumults is nothing else than to wish to hinder the word of God and to take it out of the way. For the word of God, wherever it comes to change and to renew the world. And even heathen writers testify that changes of things cannot take place without commotion and tumult, nor even without blood. It therefore belongs to Christians to expect and endure these things with a stayed mind. As Christ says, "When ye shall hear of wars and rumours of wars, be not dismayed, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not yet." Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. And as to myself, if I did not see these tumults, I should say the word of God was not in the world. But now when I do see them, I rejoice from my heart, and fear them not, being surely persuaded that the kingdom of the Pope, with all his followers, will fall to the ground. For it is especially against this that the word of God which now runs is directed. I see indeed, my friend Erasmus, that you complain in many books of these tumults, and of the loss of peace and concord, and you attempt many means whereby to afford a remedy, and, as I am inclined to believe, with a good intention. But this gouty foot laughs at your doctoring hands. For here, in truth, as you say, you sail against the tide, nay, you put out fire with straw. Cease from complaining, cease from doctoring. This tumult proceeds and is carried on from above, and will not cease until it shall make all the adversaries of the word as the dirt of the streets. Though I am sorry that I find it necessary to teach you, so great a theologian, these things, like a disciple, when you ought to be a teacher of others. Your excellent sentiment, then, that some diseases may be borne with less evil than they can be cured, applies here, which sentiment you do not appositely use. Rather call these tumults, commotions, perturbations, seditions, discords, wars, and all other things of the same kind with which the world is shaken and tossed to and fro, on account of the word of God, the diseases. These things, I say, as they are temporal, are born with less evil than inveterate and evil habits, by which all souls must be destroyed if they be not changed by the word of God, which, being taken away, eternal good, God, Christ, and the Spirit must be taken away with it. But how much better is it to lose the whole world than to lose God, the Creator of the world, who can create innumerable worlds again, and is better than infinite worlds? For what are temporal things when compared with eternal? This leprosy of temporal things, therefore, is rather to be borne, than that every soul should be destroyed and eternally damned, and the world kept in peace and preserved from these tumults by their blood and perdition, whereas one soul cannot be redeemed with the price of the whole world. You certainly have command of elegant and excellent similitudes and sentiments, but when you are engaged in sacred discussions you apply them childishly, nay, pervertedly, for you crawl upon the ground and enter in thought into nothing above what is human, whereas those things which God works are neither puerile, civil, nor human, but divine, and they exceed human capacity. Thus you do not see that these tumults and divisions increase throughout the world according to the counsel and by the operation of God, and therefore you fear lest heaven should tumble about our ears. But I, by the grace of God, see these things clearly, because I see other tumults greater than these that will arise in the age to come, in comparison of which these appear but as the whispering of a breath of air or the murmuring of a gentle brook. Section 20. But the doctrine concerning the liberty of confession and satisfaction you either deny or know not that there is the word of God. And here arises another inquiry. But we know and are persuaded that there is a word of God in which the Christian liberty is asserted, that we might not suffer ourselves to be ensnared into bondage by human traditions and laws. This I have abundantly shown elsewhere. But if you wish to enter the lists, I am prepared to discuss the point with you, and to fight it out, though upon these subjects I have books extant not a few. But the laws of the popes, you say, may at the same time be borne with and observed in charity, if perchance thus eternal salvation by the word of God and the peace of the world may together consist without tumult. I have said before that cannot be. The prince of this world will not allow the pope and his high priests and their laws to be observed in liberty, but his design is to entangle and bind consciences. This the true God will not bear. Therefore the word of God and the traditions of men are opposed to each other with implacable discord, no less so than God himself and Satan, who each destroy the works and overthrow the doctrines of the other, as regal kings each destroying the kingdom of the other. He that is not with me, saith Christ, is against me. Luke chapter 11, verse 23. And as to a fear that many who are depravedly inclined will abuse this liberty, this must be considered among those tumults as a part of that temporal leprosy which is to be borne, and of that evil which is to be endured. But these are not to be considered of so much consequence as that, for the sake of restraining their abuse, the word of God should be taken out of the way. For if all cannot be saved, yet some are saved, for whose sake the word of God is sent. And these, on that account, love it the more fervently, and assent to it the more solemnly. For what evils did not impious men commit before, when there was no word? Nay, what good did they do? Was not the world always drowned in war, fraud, violence, discord, and every kind of iniquity? For if Micah, in chapter 7, verse 4, compares the best among them to a thorn hedge, what do you suppose he would call the rest? But now the gospel is come, men begin to impute unto it that the world is evil, whereas the truth is that by the good gospel it is more manifest how evil it was, while without the gospel it did all its works in darkness. Thus also the illiterate attribute it to learning, that by its flourishing their ignorance becomes known. This is the return we make for the word of life and salvation. And what fear must we suppose there was among the Jews, when the gospel freed all from the law of Moses? What occasion did not this great liberty seem to give to evil men? But yet the gospel was not on that account taken away, but the impious were left, and it was preached to the pious, that they might not use their liberty to an occasion of the flesh. Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. Section 21. Nor is this part of your advice or your remedy to any purpose, where you say, it is lawful to speak the truth, but it is not expedient, either before everyone or at all times or in every manner. And ridiculously enough, you adduce Paul, where he says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. First book of Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 12. But Paul does not there speak of teaching doctrine or the truth, as you would confound his words and twist them which way you please. On the contrary, he will have the truth spoken everywhere at all times and in every manner, so that he even rejoices that Christ is preached even through envy and strife. Nay, he declares in plain words that he rejoices, let Christ be preached in any way. Philippians chapter 1, verses 15 to 18. Paul is speaking of facts and the use of doctrine, that is, of those who, seeking their own, had no consideration of the hurt and offence given to the weak. Truth and doctrine are to be preached always, openly and firmly, and are never to be dissembled or concealed, for there is no offence in them, they are the staff of uprightness. And who gave you the power, or committed to you the right, of confining the Christian doctrine to persons, places, times, and causes, when Christ wills it to be proclaimed and to reign freely throughout the world? For Paul saith the word of God is not bound, Second book of Timothy, chapter 2, verse 9, but Erasmus bound the word. Nor did God give us the word that it should be had with respect of places, persons, or times. For Christ saith, Go ye out into the whole world. He does not say, as Erasmus does, Go to this place and not to that. Again, preach the gospel to every creature. Mark, chapter 16, verse 15. He does not say, Preach it to some and not to others. In a word, you enjoin, in the administration of the word of God, a respect of persons, a respect of places, a respect of customs, and a respect of times. Whereas the one and especial part of the glory of the word consists in this, that, as Paul saith, there is with it no respect of persons, and that God is no respecter of persons. You see, therefore, again how rashly you run against the word of God, as though you preferred far before it your own counsel and cogitations. Hence, if we should demand of you that you would determine for us the times in which, the persons to whom, and the manner in which the truth is to be spoken, when would you come to an end? The world would sooner compute the termination of time and its own end than you would settle upon any one certain rule. In the meantime, where would remain the duty of teaching? Where that of teaching the soul? And how could you, who know nothing of the nature of persons, times, and manner, determine upon any rule at all? And even if you should know them perfectly, yet you could not know the hearts of men. Unless with you the manner, the time, and the person be this, teaching the truth so that the Pope be not indignant, Caesar be not enraged, and that many be not offended and made worse. But what kind of counsel this is you have seen above. I have thus rhetorically figured away in these vain words, lest you should appear to have said nothing at all. How much better is it for us wretched men to ascribe unto God, who knoweth the hearts of all men, the glory of determining the manner in which the persons to whom, and the times in which the truth is to be spoken. For he knows what is to be spoken to each, and when, and how it is to be spoken. He then determines that his gospel, which is necessary unto all, should be confined to no place, no time, but that it should be preached unto all at all times and in all places. And I have already proved that those things which are handed down to us in the Scriptures are such that they're quite plain and wholesome, and of necessity to be proclaimed abroad, even as you yourself determined in your Paraclesis was right to be done, and that with much more wisdom than you advise now. But let those who would not that souls should be redeemed, such as the Pope and his adherents, let it be left to them to bind the word of God and hinder men from life and the kingdom of heaven, that they might neither enter in themselves nor suffer others to enter, to whose fury you, Erasmus, by this advice of yours, are perniciously subservient.